We're back. Welcome back to our humble abode. This is the house of ways and means. Hey everybody, we're going on with this series on mental health. Waze is giving us a lot of tools and tips. We appreciate them so far. This is going to be the last episode in this short series. We have made it to our first couple sessions with our therapist, and now we've gone even further. So perhaps we're maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 sessions in. Some sessions have been good, some have been bad. A lot of emotions have welled up in you during some of these sessions, and you're just wondering, hey, is this a good fit? Am I supposed to be feeling this way? Should I continue with this therapist, or do I need to find a new one? So what would you say are some tips to better inform you of whether or not your therapist is someone you should continue on with, or whether you need to seek another therapist?
Well, the therapist should be able to identify whether the relationship is going well or not. And they should probably just let you know, hey, I don't think this is a good fit. I would recommend, and they, give you a referral for someone else. That's what I would do. However, the therapist may not realize that there's a problem or there's an issue in the therapy session and may just be kind of going along as is, but you are feeling it. Now, there's a difference between you being resistant to therapy, which happens often in therapy, where you kind of build up a wall and the therapist has to work hard to kind of, go through that wall.
Challenge you a little bit.
Yeah, so the therapist would have to challenge you a little bit. So there's a difference between resistance in therapy and the therapy or the therapist just not being a good fit for you. So you need to be able to figure that out.
You in the last video you mentioned a couple of those situations, perhaps when obviously it's a crazy situation where the therapist is inappropriately touching you or making you feel just physically uncomfortable in their presence. This is not so much that. This is just somebody making an effort to really get you to deal with some of the things that you've shut down over, or you just haven't. You've been resistant to come forward with, and it's causing you some internal conflict, I guess, about going through with the process. Could you maybe describe a little better what resistance in, I guess, the therapeutic relationship looks like?
Sure. So typically when people get to a point where they are resistant in therapy, let's say for instance they are talking about a relationship that recently ended, and they're having difficulty working through that relationship. And in the process of working through the relationship, the therapist may ask for information in regards to their past relationships. And you may not want to discuss that you abused your partner emotionally. Maybe you called your partner names in the relationship, or maybe you belittled that partner and you may not want to share the information. So resistance will look like you not wanting to share information that's pertinent to the therapy session because you do not feel comfortable sharing that information. And the information that you're sharing is not that it is a huge intimate detail, it's because it's something that you don't want people to know about you. But you also have to keep in mind that with therapy, your sessions are confidential. So if there's no one else that you can share this information with, it's definitely a therapist, because they are bound by law to maintain that information with the strictest of confidence.
Hold on. So I know that feeling, now that you explained it that way, because it's like when the doctor, they always tell you to tell the doctor everything, and you're going in for STD test, but you don't want to tell. You were like, man, I was wilding over the last couple of months. I don't know. Because it's not that you're worried that the information is not confidential, but you don't want to get lectured by the doctor or the clinician. You don't want them to feel like, they look at me like a bad, I'm like a bad person or whatever. So, I mean, what do you say to the person in that situation?
in order for any medical provider to treat you effectively, they need to know your history, right? So the way that a medical doctor would treat you, or I guess whatever contraceptives they may give to you would be different if they know that you're out here sleeping with all of America. If you are sleeping with all of America, they may not say, oh, well, let me just give you an IUD, or if it's a woman, let me just give you an IUD.
She might need some female condoms.
She may need some female condoms. She may need to have a stash of male condoms because of her sexual activity. So it's the same with therapy, with mental health. In order for us to better serve you, or for us to better address the issues that you're presenting with, we need to get a sense of what was happening in the past and how can those previous issues be affecting your current ones.
Yes, you don't want to be misdiagnosed.
You don't want to be misdiagnosed.
Then you'll blame the therapist.
Then you blame the
Really
therapist.
do. Yeah.
And then there's a difference between, if I was talking with someone, a potential client, and the conversation came up about the various symptoms that were presented about someone else. And when the person mentioned the symptoms, and when the diagnosis was given to me, I thought to myself, that's not quite adding up. I think the person may be misdiagnosed, and that could be why the medications aren't working. But then later on in the conversation, I learned that there were additional symptoms which did actually make the original diagnosis that was presented in the conversation actually appropriate. And so then my suggestion as far as psychiatry was that maybe the medications need to be adjusted, or maybe the cocktail of medications that are being used is not appropriate for the client at that time, but the diagnosis does fit. So with more information, you're able to arrive at an appropriate diagnosis, and depending on the diagnosis, you would treat those diagnoses a certain way.
Okay, so then we take those steps and those ideas, and then we say, well, hey, what if you mutually come to a consensus that, hey, this really isn't working for sure. So I guess you go back to our second video of this series where we talked about how to find an appropriate therapist.
I think one of the important things to do in, especially with the phone consultation, if you saw video 2 where we spoke about, going about finding a therapist, use that time with the phone consultation to thoroughly assess the therapist. I do not believe that because you had a phone consultation with one therapist that you can't have a consultation with 2 or 3 other therapists. You don't have to jump at the first therapist that you find that you think would be a good fit. You can do your research and use the phone consultation as an opportunity to interview your therapist to assess fit.
All right, so one last thing. You talked about, the person's specialty, the person's educational background, their state of licensure or whatever. So, besides those things, what are some questions that people shouldn't be afraid to ask to better determine if the person is a good fit?
I've gotten questions like, do you feel comfortable serving, populations that are veterans or people who are homeless? Because you want someone who can relate to what it is that you've experienced, right? So you ask those questions based on what you think your needs are. If you are seeing a relationship therapist and the person have never seen anyone for relationships, then that should be a little bit of an alert, like, hey, this person may not have that much experience seeing individuals with relationship issues. And so you want to ask that question, how much experience do you have serving? What is your experience like? Where did you serve? What population did you serve? What types of diagnoses did you serve? And what population do you feel most comfortable serving?
But certainly there's also some even softer, nuanced differences that you probably want to stay away from. Like for instance, if you're an atheist, you probably don't want to meet with a Christian counselor.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes. If you see someone now there are therapists who would not identify as a Christian counselor, but if requested, they can provide Christian counseling. So an atheist would be able to see a counselor like that because that person would not prescribe or include Christian innuendos or information within the therapy session. But if you see, like you said, someone that says healing life, a Christian counselor, and you're an atheist, obviously you don't want to see that person. That should be an automatic tell that it won't be a good fit.
Now, certainly therapists, like anybody else, have their own biases and prejudices, perhaps. What would you say, or what has been your experience with large age gaps between client and therapist? I mean, if you got somebody from this old generation who's near retirement, you got some young 20-something. I mean, has that been better for that person, or is it worse, or can there be some conflict with the advice that's given there?
I think there can be some conflict, but what I will say is that a therapist is educated to manage whatever specialty, including age range, that they feel they would like to serve. So if you, as a 40-year-old being new to the field, you are comfortable serving children, you will be trained to serve children. If you are 20-something-year-old fresh out of school, but you did a lot of geriatric work, and that is your education experience and your practicum experience, your internship experience working with the geriatric population, then you'll be comfortable serving, someone who is 50 years, 60 years plus. So it really just depends on that person's education and not so much that therapist's age. I would say that. So you should look into that as well. Asking the therapist what age they serve. So when you consider population, you don't just think about gender, you don't just think about sexuality, you also think about age. That's a part of population.
All right, Waze. Well, thank you for leading us through this Intro to Therapy series. If you guys like this content, make sure you go ahead and subscribe, drop a like on the video, and comment below if you have any questions. I mean, I know Waze here, she's a teletherapy guru. She does do her own sessions with clients on the side. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to direct toward her, put them down there in the video, and we will see you guys soon.